in charge of updating us on football scores. Mostly English Premier League. I wouldn't actually do that to you, but
She would jump right in. She would totally jump right in. But I'll do it. That's so funny.
if you all want, I'm not sure. See, we made it a month. Where were my Shabbat morning boards?
Your what?
The Shabbat morning boards? Didn't you have like 15, 20 people?
Probably too cold.
Yeah.
They're all hibernating.
They're all hibernating. Maybe they're hanging out with the duck.
Yeah, how is the duck? Oh, God.
She got mad at me yesterday.
Yeah, the duck is sitting and she is over her eggs. Aww. Wonderful little nest. It's so, we think she has like 13 eggs underneath her. We saw, we peeked around in his office. It's amazing. Yeah. No, it's like graphite. There's a window where graphite belongs.
So between my office and then there's back behind this wall is a loft, is the organ loft. And there's a window in the hallway between that has a cover over it. And so she's in the little, like, it's like a foot wide. It's tiny little space. So she's got like this mound of down around her, and I go over there and she's got her head under her wings sleeping. And then I walk by and she's like, ah. I'm like, it's okay. I'm not bothering you. I'm on the other side of the clock.
Hatching is really, last time she did it, if she did, we had pictures of her and the eggs hatching. So, and watching it time.
So I do think we should advertise that we have a petting zoo.
Right? Yeah.
Although I don't think petting is a good idea there. No. Okay. So you, Adrian and Sherry, you were asking me about kippah, and I would tell you the same thing is true for talit. So in Orthodoxy, the boundary of gender, the way it's set up is this. Women are exempt from time-bound positive mitzvot. Okay? Have you heard that before ever? No. Okay. So you have this list of mitzvot, things you're supposed to do and not do. Women, in the way Orthodox Judaism is put together, women are exempt from anything that's a positive. Do this at this time, except for lighting the candles. And the reason for that is because, of course, if women are called on for another duty or that they wouldn't be able to do it and we don't want them to have problems, and so we're going to exempt them from anything that's positive because they have other responsibilities. And besides, and this is one of those weird things of how Judaism is put together, they are holier than men, so they must not need it. Okay? I don't make things up. This is something I'm not making up. Maimonides said it. So then in traditional Judaism, you then get this interesting space where if you're not responsible for doing a mitzvah, if you do it, then somehow it upsets God because you're doing something you're not supposed to do. Okay? One other layer of this is that men are supposed to do these things, and men tend to get very distracted around women. So if women are near men while they're trying to do them, then they might get distracted and not do the things they want to do. Well, no, because if women daven, then they would be davening near men, and if they're davening near men, then the men might get distracted and forget they're supposed to daven. Right. Because they wouldn't be doing the ritual stuff up here. So it's just, that's a challenge of how Orthodoxy constructs those boundaries between gender. And so if you don't create that same boundary, if you say there is no boundary between which gender is supposed to do positive time-bound mitzvot, then that opens up things like wearing talit and kippah. Again, the best one I've seen is, where does the word yarmulke come from? What language is yarmulke? Apparently it's not. If you do a search for it, they think it might be Turkic, not Turkish, Turkic. They're not even sure what language it is. And one of my favorite texts, and it's one of those things that, like, I know I saw it, but I feel like I'm not sure I saw it because I really could have seen something. It was from the same time in the Middle Ages. One rabbi was saying he can't imagine going into a synagogue wearing shoes and having his head bare. So in Egypt, right, in Islamic countries, how do you go into a mosque? You take your shoes off, right? And at the same time, from Germany, that it was a rabbi saying, I can't imagine going into a synagogue with my my feet uncovered and my head covered. And so they didn't wear head covering going into a synagogue, but they made sure they wore shoes. And it's like, did I really see that? But there are a lot of traditions where you take your shoes because you don't want to bring the outside in, right? It's the same reason why you wash your hands before you go into when you come out of a cemetery, right? Of how do you create those boundaries between inside and outside. So it's one of those really incredible pieces of Judaism that so much of what we do is based on what we see, not necessarily what you've learned from sitting in a classroom. And then it depends on where you've been sitting to where you've been seeing it to know what people actually do. And part of it is also, I don't know what it's interesting, Jill and I have had a lot of conversations. I'm coming from a place where, because we were the only synagogue in town, we had people with a wide variety of praxis, and more people wore talit on a Saturday morning, right? Like Rick and I are the only ones holding a talit this morning. Yes? Rick, you have you're right. And that to me is like a normative, but I didn't grow at Shaarei Tzedek. I certainly didn't grow up wearing a talit. I don't know if anyone does it other than my dad or the rabbis who actually wears a talit even at Shaarei Tzedek. But if I'm going for a morning service somewhere, I'm bringing a talit. It's just culture. Now, the benefit of talit is twofold, right? I think I mentioned it to Lorelei. Seat or fidget toys. Okay? Oh, now Rick's cracking up. Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't play with mine, but pretty good. Yeah, I never thought about it.
I mean, in addition to all the other things. Yes, Adrian.
Slightly different subject. I understand this morning that John prayer says, I thank God every day I'm not a woman.
That's in the traditional liturgy. But again, that's that same piece of I'm thinking in the traditional Orthodox text, thank God I'm not a woman because, women don't get to say this. There's a chauvinistic gender bias in that text. What you will see in ours, where it's been changed of, thank you for making me in the divine image. Or thank me, you'll actually see it in just a minute when we get there, but thank you, God, for making me a Jew, which is really problematic in this setting, because like we said that last week, and I don't want to know what percentage of the community wasn't Jewish. I mean, there was a lot of people that were non-Jews that were here as family and friends, and they're saying that, and it's like, it doesn't quite work. You hadn't thought about that one before.
I was actually wondering that during the bar mitzvah So I actually thought, like, I'm surprised that it's not
So,
the other way.
right, but what do we, after each of those brachot, we'll see them in just a minute, but after each of those brachot, what do you say? Which means
We all are saying the same thing.
we include me in for that one. It's just a twist of reality that the prayer leader is not the one that says that line because of how they're laid out. It has nothing to do, it makes sense what you're saying is, Stavka, wouldn't that be the line for the bar or bat mitzvah student to say? And it just, because of how the liturgy lays out, that's interesting.
It was just funny to me.
That of all the lines, that one would be the one that would make sense. But in the same way, almost none of the prayers that get said in the service, it's like that's my line to say. It is my line to say, but it's we're all doing them together. It's just how we're interact with them. So if we started off, we could start off. We're not there yet, Rick. Right? You got to warm up a little bit. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, cherry berry berry bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Ma'yafeh hayom. Shabbat Shalom, Ma'yafeh hayom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. And so we are now on page 72. If anyone does, any Jewish adult does want to put on a talit, there are plenty hanging out in the foyer. But as I wrap myself in my talit, I fulfill the mitzvah of my Creator. Bless Adonai, O my soul, Adonai my God, how great you are. You are robed in glory and majesty, wrapping yourself in light as in a garment, spreading forth the heavens like a curtain. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lihit atef batzitzi. And so we're on page 74, and this is a piece of Numbers that comes, or 192, but it comes out of the book of Numbers with the whole Bilam talking donkey, not seeing God, kind of almost like a burning bush moment. But this is when Bilam is out surveying the people of Israel, and does he say blessing or curse? And he says blessing. And so how when we wake up every morning, we have a chance to bless or to curse. And so what does our tradition do? It puts in our mouths these words of blessing. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. And at the top of page 77, we read together. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware we would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofech ol basar, umafli la'asot. Oops. Eloha nishama shenatata bitaho rahi. Eloha nishama shenatata bitaho rahi. Eloha nishama shenatata bitaho rahi. Tehorai. We read together from the bottom of page 79. My soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me. I am thankful for its thirst for compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, Asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. And so if you'll notice, we did a blessing for the body, that all the body parts are working. And then we do a blessing for the soul, that we're feeling our breath, feeling our spirit. These are just part of the blessings we say to wake up each morning. And so we rise on page 80. I did say that, right? Please rise on page, please. Wake up! Okay, this is one of my favorite prayers. The translation's wrong. Okay? Speaking of my little ducky friend, this says, praised are you, Adonai, our God and ruler of the universe, who has given the rooster the ability, the wisdom to differentiate between day and night. So how do we know that the rooster differentiates between day and night? What does he do? Cock-a-doodle-doo. So one of the first blessed everyday miracles is that something from outside us tells us that there's a transition in day. Right? That nature has an alarm clock, and that we should be tuning in because we are part of something greater than ourselves. And so these we do offer responsively. And so after I do one, then you would all join in and say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. And you all say, Amen. So there's eyes, and then here is getting our bodies moving. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes and slumber from the eyelids. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Amen. And we are seated. And if you looked at that whole litany, each one of those and Matir Asarim is also a potty prayer because you're relieving those who are bound, or freeing those that are bound. And so each one of those, each of you are different from getting dressed and Sherry, to your point, there are 3 separate prayers about waking up in there, right? Slumber from the eyes and sleep from the eyelids, who gives strength to the weary. Even in our liturgy, the rabbis are saying, yeah, we know it's hard to get up in the morning. And so here we have, as we wake up, okay, everybody, spreads the earth over the waters. You get to stretch out your body. You get to test the knees a little bit, who makes firm our steps. Here, as we are awake and together, we do an act of study. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign in the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the mouths of your Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you, by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamlamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'or, sha'adam ochel perotehem bo'olam hazeh, v'ha'keren kayemet lo le'olam haba ve'eluhen. Together, these are the things we do in our lifetime that make this world a better place and will be remembered about us after we have died. They are kibud av va'im, ugmilut chasadim, v'hashkamat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'arvit, v'haknasat orchim, uvikor cholim, v'haknasat kala, uvayat hamet, v'yun tefillah, v'hava'at shalom bein adam l'chaveiro, v'talmud Torah keneged kulam. Realize that the study of Torah is equal to them all, because by studying Torah, we learn how, when, and why to do all of these things. And on page 94, or 212, if you're in the larger book, we rise. So now hopefully everyone is awake. And so we shift from that act of waking up to just bringing praise into the world. Baruch Shamar v'haya olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Osever Reshit, Baruch Omer Ve'oseh, Baruch Gozer Kayem, Baruch Merachem Al Haaretz, Baruch Merachem Al Habriot, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov L'Re'av, Baruch Chayla V'Kayam Lanetzach, Baruch Podeh Umatzil, Baruch Shemo. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the world came to be. Blessed is the one whose word is deed. Blessed is the one who decrees and fulfills. Blessed is the one who's compassionate towards all creatures. Blessed is the one who rewards the reverent. Blessed is the one who redeems and saves. Blessed is God's name. With songs of praise we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty. For you are the source of life in the universe. One God, life of the universe, praised and glorious ruler, your name is eternal. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign who is glorified through praise. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal batishbachot. As we are seated, and so as we enter Psukei de Zimra, there's a whole selection of different psalms and texts we can offer. Here is Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat, Tov le'adot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir liyom ha'shabbat, tov le'adot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor ve'alei navel, alei higayon. That's a higayon is a stringed instrument, and a kinnor is a harp. So air harp, guys. Alei higayon bakinor, mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov le'adot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. So we're on page 96, a song of Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. We'll read this together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai. How very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, and a fool cannot understand this. That the righteous shall bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. And so that, actually, how many of you have heard Tzadik Tamar Yifrach Yifrach, Tzadik Tamar Yifrach, Tzadik Tamar Yifrach Yifrach, Ka'erez Balvanon Nizgeh? No. Maybe. It's okay. This is just those different pieces where you pick up different pieces of text and melody. And one of the biggest challenges that I would tell you is the way that if you are not a Hebrew reader, if you are not a Hebrew speaker, so much of the text you know is because of the melody that you sing it with. And so I'm going to go past Ashrei. And we're on our projection. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Nishmat kol chai, our every breath that we breathe could surely be a wonder if we could only taste every sensation passing through us, taste every breath we pull into our lungs. Were we to refuse to allow any joy or pain brought to any of our senses to pass through us unexamined or unappraised together, then every breath, every movement, every thought, every apprehension, every fear, every caress would be a prayer of awe. Let us feel it all. Let us embrace it all. Let us love it all. Then we would not only eat, we would not only hear, we would not only be awake, we would not only be standing, then we would not only be released from prison, free to say thanks, free to feel our love, free to feel our pain, free to struggle, free to submit, and free to inspire the breath of life, infusing all manner, all energy in all time and space. When that breath is our breath, then every breath will be a holy one. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. And we are on page 106 or 224. I invite you all to please rise as we enter our formal worship and transition from the wake-up prayers and the Pesukei de Zimra. We offer the words of Reader's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. B'alma divrach yirutev yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uchayedecho Beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv v'yimeru. Yehi shmira b'mevorach, le'olamu al me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yipa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yoma. Amen. And as we have gathered here as a minyan of people in this place, and we have this opportunity to offer the words of Baruch Hu. Yada da da da, 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 yada da da da. Yada da da da, yada da da da. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Yada da da da, yada da da da. Yada da da da, 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 yada da da da. This is a call and response to say to the congregation, hey, is everybody ready to pray? Watch how this works. Praise Adonai, to whom our praises due. Praise be Adonai, to whom our praises due, now and forever. And we are seated. So if you look, and here this is helpful for Delilah, when's the other time we use Baruch Hu? When does this text also appear? The blessing for the Torah, right? So you would have a minyan of people around and everybody saying, are you really ready to are you all ready to really read the Torah? Yes, we're really ready to read the Torah now and forever. And so some of the texts we have are prayers and some of them are stage directions. Baruch Hu is a stage direction. Reader's Kaddish is a scene change. And so this is really it's almost a play. And so this is everybody getting ready. This is we're getting ready to start the Shema and our blessings. If we're saying Shema out loud, we need a minyan of people. This is me, the service leader, telling you, hey, we have a minyan. Are you all ready to pray? We're awake, we're ready to pray now, and we'll keep going forever. And then I tell you, okay, I know you're all with me, so we're going on for the blessing for creation. We just say the words, but there is this really incredible interplay behind it. On page 111, in the beginning, even then, a new light was sown for the righteous, a promise that your light would become the catalyst, first for order and then for hope. Author of language and light, help us to use the words as you have, to cast light into dark waters, draw out justice and truth. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'orot. And from the top of 112. Enlighten our eyes in your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. V'ha'er enenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levaveinu le'ahava ul'ira et shemecha, v'lo nevosh, v'lo nikalem, v'lo nikashel, le'olam va'ed, ki v'shem kodshecha, hagadol v'hanora batachnu, nagila v'nismecha b'shua techa. And if you were wearing a talit, you could gather the four corners of your talit, because if you look at the English, we say it together. Gather us in peace from the four corners of our land, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praised be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel with love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Chuto Leolam Vad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlektecha v'derech ushochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letatafod beineinecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. So that's the first paragraph of Shema. On 117, 235, responsively, this is an English form of the second paragraph of the Shema. If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us, and we shall serve all that is holy with all our intellect and all our passion and all our life. All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is common and profane, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us, and our world will grow inhospitable. Let us therefore lace these words into our passion and our intellect, and bind them as a sign upon our hands and eyes. Let us write them in mezuzot upon our doors and teach them to our children. Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise of those yet to be. In the full third paragraph of Shema, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta alehem, v'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam, v'natnu al tzitzit kanaf betil techelet, v'haya lechem letzitzit, uritem oto, uzkartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, v'lo taturu, acharei levavchem, v'acharei nechem, asher atem zonim achareihem. Leman tizkeru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kadoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. And from the bottom of 121, and our next text we'll sing will be Michamelcha. The eternal truth it is that you alone are God, and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. You shall not hate your brother or sister in your heart. Why do you crush my people and oppress them, asks God. Praise to God Most High. Yai bye bim bim bum, yada bye bim bum. Yai bye bim bim bum, yada bye bim bum. Yai da 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 da, yada bye bim bum. Yai da 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 da, yada bye bim bum. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh, no rati lod o sefele, no rati lod o sefele, shira chadesha shebechu geulim, lishimcha al satayam yachad kulam, hodu v'himlichu ve'amru, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Yai bye bim bim bum, yada bye bim bum. Yai da da dim bim bum, yada bye bim bum. Yai da 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 da, yada bye bim bum. Yai da 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 da, yada bye bim bum. And if you'll notice in this text, every line will end with the word Yisrael. And get ready to rise. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufdei kinumecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzavaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Adonai tzifei taktiv ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avod V'Imahot Umevi Gula Livnei V'Nehem Laman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaGashem Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed Haye HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofech Olim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Baal Guvurot Umidom Melach Melech Memi Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye hakol Nekadesh et shemcha ba'olam Keshem shemakti shimoto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad niviecha V'karazel zeve amartos Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzivaot Melochul haaretz Kevodo Adir, Adirenu Adonai Adonenu ma'adir shem chol bechol haaretz Baruch evod Adonai mimkomo Echadu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu Vahu Yashmienu Berachamav Le'nei Kol Chai Ani Adonai Elohechem Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohai Yichzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagid Godlecha Ul Netzach Netzachim Kedushatecha Nakdish V'shivchacha Eloheinu me'pinu lo yamush Leolam Va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. And on 132, 250, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם עוד היא לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית olam. At the top of 135, we offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope. For Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Together, prayer connects us to the divine, what is infinite and eternal, suffusing our spirits and empowering us as we move through the world. Prayer cannot bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. Baruch atah Adonai, shodcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim anachnu lach, which means, and we thank you. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understandings of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We pray that we might live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulchan na'eh lahodot. O world of miracles, you are supremely broken. Your shards are painful and cutting. Your pieces are scattered across the globe, aching for wholeness. We seek justice and peace in you. We long and love divine sparks igniting fires within us. We tend the embers and feed the flames, at times nearly consuming ourselves and our neighbors. We pray for, together, we pray for, no, we demand, open-heartedness and resilience. We seek grace and peace. We pursue justice. May the fragments of our world and the brokenness of our soul be blessed with strength, wisdom, and compassion. May we be whole again, full of shalom quickly in our days. Baruch atah Adonai, hambarech et amo Yisrael, ba-shalom. As we are seated, that's the end of the formal prayers of the tefillah, the Amidah, the standing prayers. And so we have time to offer our own silent prayers. You can use these words that are projected for you, or simply offer the words of your heart. We take a few moments for silent prayer. To read the glory. May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my Redeemer. Ihiyu l'ratzon imrefi v'hegion libi fan. Ya'aseh Shalom Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Did anyone want a chumash? Ashlosha devarim, Ashlosha devarim, Ashlosha, Shlosha devarim, ha'olam, ha'olam, omed. Ashlosha devarim, Ashlosha devarim, Ashlosha, Shlosha devarim, ha'olam, ha'olam, omed. Ve'al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. Jacob, I am throwing so many curveballs at you left, right, and center. So we are in Parshat Va'era. So there are two parshiot that are very similar in title. One is Vayera, which is in Genesis. That's the binding of Isaac and that piece. And then there is Va'era, this one, which is connected to the experience of the burning bush. This is the, I'm just giving myself a heads up here to watch time for us. So Va'era is the second portion of the book of Exodus, and it opens with Moses standing at the burning bush, and God is giving him instructions before he's going to go hang out with Pharaoh and plagues and all of that. But remember, we are in triennial year 3, and so we're reading the last piece of Va'era, which is the various plagues that we're going to be seeing. What holiday is this for? Passover. Is it Passover right now?
No.
So why are we reading this, Rabbi? Isn't that for Passover?
Starting after Rosh Hashanah, or after
Aha! Don't worry, I'll repeat it. We started the Torah when we started the Torah, right? We're telling the story of the Torah in order that goes from Genesis to Deuteronomy over the course of the year. So you just read stuff when you get to it as you're going through the story. At the same time, we also do our holidays. And that was really, I remember teaching a Judaism in holidays class. We also observe our holidays when they happened in time, okay? So Passover happens on the 14th day of Nisan, or the full moon of the month of Aviv in the spring, and so when it's that time, we celebrate it. In terms of the order of our holidays, right, you have Purim and then you have Passover. Did they happen in that historical order? No, not at all, right? Purim is in the diaspora. Passover is one of our earliest things. So Jewish time is interesting because we are doing a lot of things all at once. On one level, we're doing this. You can count time. You know where you are in the year based on the Torah portion, right? So I know Delilah is becoming bat mitzvah in the month of October, and so I know her Torah portion is going to either be, depending on when the high holidays are, either at the end of Deuteronomy or at the beginning of Genesis. And so it's part of that thing with the leap years, but you know where you are. There's a rhythm of time based on the parshiot. At the same time, there's a rhythm of time based on the holidays. Did anyone notice what moon the phase was? What phase the moon was in last night or this morning? It was a crescent moon, so it's happens to be getting smaller. So I know we are coming up to we're getting ready for the month of Shvat, and so I'm starting to get ready everything from Tu B'Shvat. So there are lots of things that are part of Judaism that are saying, here's where you are in time and space. And it's just an extraordinary part of our tradition that you have all of these different ways of seeing where you are. So we're in Exodus, and we are in chapter 8, verse 16. Sandy, do you know how to turn off that alarm? If not, I do. Yeah. Left side, right side. Left side, right side. It's actually 3255. Not that I just announced that on stream. Hi, anyone who's streaming. That's also the winning lottery numbers today. Chapter 8, verse 16. We're going to get one, but I'm giving it a moment. Do we have a page number over here? 388. So here we have, and we're already a couple of plagues in where we are in the Torah portion. So they've had the blood, and so we're really catching, Pharaoh's attention has been captured. And the Eternal One says to Moses, early in the morning, present yourself to Pharaoh as he's coming out of the water. Now think about that scene for a moment, okay? So what is this moment when Moses is catching Pharaoh? When is he going to have this audience with Pharaoh? He's coming out of the shower, right? First thing in the morning, as he's coming, he's gone down to the Nile to bathe, and he's popping up and showing up and wanting to have an audience as soon as he steps out of the bath. Pretty extraordinary moment, right? Present yourself to Pharaoh as he's coming out of the water. He probably hasn't even had his first cup of meat in the morning. And say to him, thus is God, thus says the Eternal One, let my people go that they may worship me. Okay, so here he is, he's presenting himself. Remember, if you're coming out of the various plagues, one of the plagues is blood. Is blood. So what's the Nile has just turned back into good water. He's having his bath, and he's coming out, and who's he meeting face to face? There's Moses, ready with his demands. Okay? Now, do any of you recognize that phrase, let my people go? When Israel was in Egypt land, oppressed so hard they could not stand. So, where does that song come from? Here. We're singing it, right? How many of you have sung it like at every Seder going back years and years and years? So I did want to pull a little bit of a history of that text, of that song, Let My People Go. Early slave songs, known as spirituals, were adaptations of the hymns that new slaves were taught during Sunday worship. Spirituals served not only as a means of education and worship, they gave the community a way to express its deepest aspiration for freedom and social change. This text of Let My People Go is not a Jewish song. Rick's thinking about that. It's a spiritual, right? And so it's one of those things of how did it find its way into American Jewish life? What? Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, hold on. Sandy, I'm coming to help. Yeah, silence. Here, I got it. Yes.
How did Moses have such easy access to the,
I think that's a great question, right? The guy who's been terrorizing your king and suddenly he's able to show up at the bath, at the edge of the river. I don't have a great answer for that, although this is a stepson theoretically. But I think it's a great question of what's going on here that Moses is able just to show up. Adopted son.
but he was banished, or he fled?
He fled. We also never really get that they have an APB out for him or arrest warrant because it's not. I don't know that anyone knows necessarily what he did, but I think it's really interesting that he keeps stirring up all this trouble. But clearly, if something's going on, that he's able to keep getting into Pharaoh's presence. But it's an interesting one. So these spirituals recounted the brutality of the slavery. They reflected an enduring legacy of hope and determination and unwavering faith. Select biblical stories and images constituted a distinctive slave canon that drew heavily upon the Old Testament. They identified with the biblical narrative of the plight of the ancient Hebrews who were children of God, and eventually, through the leadership and bravery of Moses, were freed from bondage and brought to the land of Israel, or the north, for slaves. And one example of the spiritual is Go Down Moses. Go Down Moses, so you can see this. Now, do you...
What the spiritual is and how this became a spiritual?
how this became a spiritual. So we're going to, if you look at the last paragraph there in the middle of the page, we know the spiritual songs were used as instructions for runaway slaves to escape the north, disguised as biblical story. So these were, I can give you an example of it. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Right? It's simple words, catchy melody that are easy to teach and get people going. And I think that these spirituals are ways, how do you turn story into song that is easy to pass generation to generation? David, Melch Yisrael, Chai Chai V'Kayam. We do it in Hebrew in so many different ways. This was what was happening in the African American community and the slave community in those early centuries. What's fascinating is you can see here music obtained through Reverend Elsie Lookwood. You realize that it was where the slaves, did they have access to writing down their music or getting it published? Right? So it depended on who heard it and then how it got written down. Speaking of spirituals, take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd. That's not a spiritual? What? But if you go to a baseball game and you're at the 7th inning stretch, how many people stand up, they know the ritual, and they sing it with gusto? Thousands of people daily sing that, right? It's a spiritual, it's just a little different spirit. Buy me some. So, and there's absolutely fascinating history behind the Take Me Out to the Ball game. And it's again, catchy melody, simple words, telling a story. In this case, these are spirituals that are coming from the slave experience. And what is a powerful story if you're a slave in North America to latch onto, but the story of the liberation of the people of Israel from Egypt. And again, they are telling these Old Testament stories, and then it's not passed by music, it's passed by word of mouth and by experience and sitting together. Simple words, catchy melody becomes powerful. There is so much in our liturgy that we do that with. I call your attention to it because it is fascinating to me that this is a fundamental Sinai, from Sinai, Passover melody that we sing in our Seder, and yet it's really appropriated. It wasn't originally our song, even though it's originally our story. Yes, go ahead, Susan. I don't know that anyone knows, quote unquote, who wrote it, but it goes back into, I think, into the 17th or 18th century. And one of the things that I found beautiful about it was the spiritual Go Down Moses clearly has a hidden transcript. And according to Harriet Tubman, Go Down Moses was one of the 2 code songs that fugitive slaves used to communicate when fleeing Maryland as they traversed the Underground Railroad, which I had no idea. That it was one of those things, so it was a call and response. So if you are walking up to a place on the Underground Railroad, you start singing the song, so the people who are in that stop know that you are the person who's coming, or it's kind of like Marco Polo, but it's a musical place of Marco Polo. In fact, we kind of just did that with Baruch Hu, of that call and that response of saying, hey, I'm coming, you know who I am. Oh, I know who you are, it's safe for you to come. Right? And so it's just a very different usage than what we're used to. I'm wondering, could do some research, if it was the 1960s when that found its way into American Jewish life, what was in the 1960s, when were some of these spirituals being sung? In the civil rights movement. Half of the civil rights workers were Jewish. 75% of the attorneys were Jewish, and so were those civil rights workers, were they picking this up, and it became part of the text and subtext of what they were then bringing back to their home congregations and doing in their Passover Seders. It's kind of incredible piece that goes with it. Okay. So if you look, this is pretty incredible. So if you're on page 2, look at text 2, Ibn Ezra on verse 22. So do you know that name, Ibn Ezra? Okay. And Rick, what do you know about Ibn Ezra? You just know the name. So last night we sang, Ki Yeshmera Shabbat El Yishmereni. That is a text from Ibn Ezra. He's a biblical commentator. He's about 100 years or so after Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzhak. And Ibn Ezra is in, I believe, if I remember correctly, North Africa. Okay? So we are talking 11th, 12th century, right? So we're talking about 1,000 years ago. And this is part of his commentary on verse 22. Rabbi Joshua says that the clause, abomination of the Egyptians, was written to disparage idol worship. Okay? So this was the line 22. But the Eternal said, I would not, okay, sorry. I'm going to go back to page 1 for just a minute. I forgot I stopped at let my people go. It's always the high point, right? Okay, so he says, Pharaoh's coming out of the bath. Moses runs up to him and says, let my people go. I don't think he's saying the spiritual at that point, but you never know. For if you do not let my people go, I will loose swarms of insects against you and your courtiers, and your people, and your houses, and the houses of the Egyptians, and the very ground they stand on shall be filled with swarms of insects. But on that day I will set apart the region of Goshen, where my people dwell, so no swarms of insects shall be there, and that you may know that I, the Eternal One, am in the midst of the land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. Tomorrow the sign shall come to pass. And again, think, and this time I shall come to pass. Okay. And the Eternal did one. Heavy swarms of insects invaded Pharaoh's palace. And doesn't this make you start to itch just as you read this? Through the country, the land of Egypt was ruined because of the swarms of insects. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, go sacrifice to your God within the land, right? So this is early in the plague cycles. You're going to stay in the land. But Moses replied, it would be not right to do this, for what we sacrifice to the Eternal One is untouchable to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice that which is untouchable to the Egyptians before their very eyes, will they not stone us? So we must go 3 days into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Eternal One, our God, as God has commanded us. Okay? So here you have the beginnings of this negotiation. Moses is saying, let us go 3 days into the wilderness, and you feel like Pharaoh's like, yeah, 3 days, really, and we'll see how far you go in 3 days. So coming back, what does it mean that we can't do that sacrifice where you all can see us because it would freak you out because what we're doing is so weird to you all. So, Rabbi Joshua, according to Rabbi Joshua, it's idol worship. We don't worship idols. You worship idols. It would really flip you out if you saw us worshiping not the idols. Rabbi Joshua further states that the God of Egypt was shaped like a lamb because the Egyptians believed the constellation of the land ruled over their land. It is because of this that the Egyptians did not eat meat. However, if the reason for the Egyptians not eating meat was their worship of the lamb, why didn't they also abstain from ox and goat meat? I believe the ancient Egyptians in the time of Moses had the same belief held by the people of India, who make up more than half of the world. All of them are descendants of Ham. They do not eat meat until this very day. These people do not drink milk or blood or eat fish or eggs. In other words, they don't eat anything from a living creature. Furthermore, they abhor any person who eats any of the aforementioned. This is Torah commentary from a rabbi in the 11th, 12th century. What catches your attention there? Well, so Rabbi Ibn Ezra is saying that Joshua would tell us that the Egyptians are vegans. That's what it kind of says here. And why are they vegans? They're practically like the people of India. How long would it take us to get to India? About 15 hours, right? You get on an airplane, you're in India. Okay, right? How long would it have taken Rabbi Ibn Ezra? A long time. If we wanted to know what kinds of things that people in India eat, how long would it take us to find out? It's as fast as we can type on our phones, right? This is Ibn Ezra in the 12th century as part of his Torah commentary, giving us a cultural anthropology statement based on what he thinks the Egyptians did 4,000 years ago by what he thinks what people from India ate in his day and age.
And where was he? In Spain?
He was in North Africa, if I remember correctly. But still, it's really kind of extraordinary that as you're reading Torah, the comment is actually insight into what in his experience, people from India, how they eat. And if you have a conversation with my oldest child, Ren, who lived in India, there are lots of different cultures within India. It's not a monolithic culture by any means. But it's just that whole image of this is half the world, this is how they eat. To be able to see that as part of Torah commentary is pretty extraordinary. Now, there are parts of India that is very much like that, but it's pretty complicated because it has to do with caste and power and all kinds of different things as well. Okay?
What does this have to do with Moses saying, "Let my people go"?
That's a fair question. That's part of Torah and part of Torah commentary. That sometimes it has nothing to do with how we tell the story. To me, this is why the rabbis are looking at this text and having all kinds of incredible conversations. For Ibn Ezra, he's wondering why would there be a ritual that they would do that would be so weird to the Egyptians that they wouldn't want the Egyptians to see them doing it. And for Ibn Ezra, the answer is because they were vegans, how he assumes the Indians were.
So their ritual was going to involve meat.
But yes, because we know that that's what they were going to do sacrifices, right? We know that from Passover. But we don't know if this is really what Moses meant. This is one rabbi giving us one answer from over 2,000 years ago. And so sometimes Torah is giving us a spiritual answer, and sometimes like this, it's cultural anthropology.
I wonder if the abomination part could just be because we're worshiping one God and you're worshiping idols.
It's Torah, so there are lots of different answers. And who even knows if there was really something Moses was even saying that it was just, hey, we need an excuse to go out over here, right? So like you have your kids that say, oh, let me take out the trash so they can go and talk to the neighbor next door, for example, right? I'm sure Rick could tell us all kinds of stories that people have come up with all kinds of excuses to let me go wander over here and cause trouble. Is that fair? Oh, yeah. So we don't know if he's really saying, oh, there's a real reason that you don't want to watch us, or of, hey, let us go and do this so you can't watch us, wink, wink, wink. Okay? Yeah. This is Torah study. Feel free to ask, Susan.
Do they have anthropological, whatever kind of evidence that the Egyptians were Hebrews?
Not that this is the first time I've ever seen it. That's kind of why it caught my attention. That sounds so strange to me. And it's really interesting that is what Ibn Ezra is picking up on here. And so I would totally want to be doing research of why Ibn Ezra is arguing that. What did he actually know and experience did he have with people from India in his day and age, and what people of India has experienced in his time even be related to what was happening in Egypt. But he's doing this in a very almost scientific way of cultural anthropology. Here he is, this is 2,000 years ago, and we're getting cultural anthropology in the midst of Torah study. So, I'm going to go on to the second aliyah. So I'm on page 3.
Oh, I got the 1 minute, 10 seconds.
What did the AI tell us?
Yes, ancient Egyptians ate meat. It was mainly consumed by the wealthy and upper class.
There you go. But Ibn Ezra sure gave us some interest. Primarily.
Based on cereal, fruits, vegetables, fruit, milk, and
So, have any of you heard the phrase hardening of the heart in a biblical context? Okay, so what's incredible is that part of what we experience is that Pharaoh hardens his own heart, and then you will also see places where God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And it's really one of those things of, how do I feel that the Egyptians are getting punished when God is making Pharaoh stubborn? And so here is a little bit of context for that. Okay, I will let you sacrifice the Eternal One in the wilderness, but don't go very far. You can take the car to the store, but don't go any further than that. I'm making that. Oh, I'm on page 3 in the middle. The part about the store was me making commentary. Plead then for me, right? So Pharaoh is worried that if Moses doesn't step up, then the insects are going to be a problem. And so Pharaoh relents. You can go and you can do your sacrifice, but please intercede with God. And Moses said, when I leave your presence, I will plead with the Eternal One that the swarms of insects depart tomorrow from Pharaoh and his courtiers and his people, but do not let Pharaoh again act deceitfully, not letting the people go to sacrifice the Eternal One, right? Hey, Pharaoh, don't change your mind. So Moses left Pharaoh's presence and pleaded with the Eternal One. And the Eternal One did as Moses asked. God removed the swarms of insects from Pharaoh, from his courtiers, from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh became stubborn this time also and would not let the people go. So this is from the Eitz Chaim Torah commentary. Would someone read text 3? Go ahead, Adrian.
Human memories are so short. When Pharaoh was suffering, he could be compassionate toward his suffering slaves. When he recovered, he lost that sense of compassion. And note that here, Pharaoh hardens his own heart.
Okay, and then on the very next page, you actually get where the Eternal One siftens Pharaoh's heart. And this is from Abraham Joshua Heschel. Those in whom viciousness becomes second nature notes in brutality is linked to haughtiness, and they forfeit, and therefore their right to the gift of free will. This is in text 3, on the middle of page 3. The first one is that human memory is short, so as soon as we're not suffering anymore, we tend to lose our compassion, which, boy, do we know that's true. What was that, Randall? Never happens. I've heard lots of discussion around that, around our current political discourse, right? And then you have the second piece, and this one is the one that is so interesting to me, in the space between chapter 8 and 9, now it's God stiffening Pharaoh's heart, kaved, which has to do with making very heavy. Those in whose viciousness becomes second nature, notes, in whose brutality is linked to haughtiness, they forfeit their ability and their right to the gift of free will. Do you like that? It's an interesting explanation to that idea that it's real. Pharaoh set this up. If you're nasty for so long that at a certain point it doesn't matter whether you have free will or not, because you're just going to keep being nasty, and that you have no opportunity to change. Do you all like that? I've got one shaking her head no.
Why does brutality have to be linked to haughtiness? Why is brutality alone sufficient?
I think it's the link of the two. I don't think it says that always brutality gets linked to haughtiness. It's when you put brutality and haughtiness together, you get really a toxic stew. So, I mean, it's that question, we know that at the beginning of the story that Pharaoh is hardening his own heart. What we see is as the story keeps going, then it's God hardening Pharaoh's heart. And it's that real challenge of, wait, why is God doing all of this awful stuff to the Egyptians when God is the one who's pushing Pharaoh to do it? And it's a real piece of challenging text. There's something to that idea of getting caught up in the stuff that you're doing, and so caught up that you lose sight of how much damage you're doing.
But this wasn't necessarily Pharaoh's choice. I mean, it says, the eternal one stiffened the heart of Pharaoh. I mean, what happened to free will?
Well, what it's saying is at that point he had lost his free will because of all of the stuff he had. I'm going to come back because I'm thinking about this. What is inertia?
Staying still. Not
Things in motion stay.
yes.
Things in motion tend to stay in motion. And the word for hardening is kaved, which has to do with mass or weight. And so maybe it's not that God hardened his heart, it's maybe he has hardened his heart so much, he has got himself so much in this that the inertia of his actions take over and he doesn't have the will to really get it to stop.
In that case, you wouldn't need God to do it, he would just keep doing it himself. Anyway, maybe the idea is that, because wasn't it the first five are Pharaoh and the next five are God, hardens the heart?
It goes through, yeah, it goes through that kind of cycle.
Maybe it's to show that now God's getting a little more interested. He's not going to rely just on Pharaoh hardening his own heart, and particularly since the 10th one is so terrible, it shows that God is taking a more active part in ultimately freeing the Israelites.
This is all part of it, and you start talking about theodicy and Holocaust, and it's like, how did God let that happen? And it's, why did people go along with it? And there are all of those questions, and I feel like that's kind of bound up in this kind of text as well, of where is the humanity of this? Where is the free will? Where is the responsibility? How did the Egyptians get it to that point, right? If you're seeing all of these plagues, why aren't you responding to them? Or are you just saying, well, that's an act of God, I don't have control over it? Denise is shaking her. The wheels are turning.
Yeah, because I personally don't believe that God lets things happen. Maybe God helps how you react to what happens, but why do young babies die or get illnesses? God doesn't let them happen or make them happen, my opinion.
Right. So, and that's the challenge of one of the challenges of Passover versus Purim, which is really fascinating. How many times is God mentioned in the book of Esther? None. And in Passover, how often is God mentioned? Constantly. And so this is part of Judaism too, that we start, there's a cycle of Jewish time that starts with Passover and ends with Purim. That you start off with the Passover story where it's really all God, God intervening directly with plagues. This is all God, God proving God's self and how mighty God is to overthrow the kingdom of Egypt and get the people to freedom and redemption. To the Purim story where it's all on Esther. Right? This is all on Esther, it's all on Mordecai, it's all on the people of Israel to get themselves out of the challenging situation that they're in. And we go from Purim, or from Passover, and we go through our whole year, and by the end of the year we're at Purim, and then you flop back over and you're right back into Passover. And so I think, Denise, and David, I think it's going back and forth between those two polarities of, wait, how much of this is God's responsibility, and how much of this is human responsibility, and how much are things we can't control and how much are things we can control, and toggling back and forth between those two very challenging poles. And that you see both that interplay of the human responsibility and divine intervention, right? And you can tell me, oh, there really is no divine intervention, but that time I lost my keys when they suddenly appeared, you have to wonder about that. Okay? I feel like one of those things, just like I was like, I'm not sure how that's going to solve, and then an answer appeared to me out of nowhere. Okay? Other questions? So we're going to go to the bottom of page 4, and this is the last piece we'll do. So the 5th aliyah, you continue to thwart my people and do not let them go. This time tomorrow, and remember what the weather was in the last week, I will rain down a heavy hail, such as not been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. There will be there will be snowstorms in Pensacola and New Orleans. Therefore, order your livestock and everything you've been brought open under shelter, every man and beast that is found outside, not having been brought indoors, shall perish when the hail comes down upon them. And isn't that a cool detail? That God is saying, hey, you're about to have a problem, get out of the way of it. Those among Pharaoh's courtiers who feared the Eternal One's word brought their slaves and livestock indoors to safety, but those who paid no regard to the word of the Eternal One left their slaves and livestock in the open. And now then begs the question, wait a second, they had slaves, and they're now leaving them, so the slaves are suffering because their masters didn't listen to the warning, which is a really challenging kind of verse that's there. And this is Miriam Liebman of JTS. So this is the conservative rabbinical school. Gemara asks how we can pray and praise God with joy in the midst of suffering. Rab Nachman Bar Yitzhak cites Psalm chapter 2, verse 11, saying, serve the Eternal One in fear and rejoice with trembling. And Gemara asks, what does it mean to rejoice with trembling? To which Rav Ada ben Matana responds, in the name of Rabbah, one may not experience unbridled joy. Even where there is rejoicing, there should be trembling. In this very section of Talmud where we learn that we break a glass under the chuppah at a wedding to temper our joy, even if only momentarily, to acknowledge the suffering of the world around us. Throughout the Parsha, it seems to me that the Talmud intentionally chosen to refer to these acts as magafot, plagues, suffered by the Egyptians, and not miracles or wonders that saved the Israelites, other than the very general references in other places. As is the case elsewhere in Torah. In choosing this language, in pointing us towards the destruction of Egyptian life and land, Torah sends us the message Rabbah does in the Talmud. We must be able to celebrate our own victory while simultaneously mourning the losses suffered by our enemies. We begin to do so consciously, choosing the language we use, because although language cannot eliminate suffering, it can change how we respond to it. Yep.
Is there a way you can take us to the end of what it meant that God now hardened Pharaoh's heart?
What do you mean? So I can't speak to God's thought process. I could try, but it would be ugly. I think that goes back to that whole question of free will, and is there again, hardening the heart, the Hebrew is kaved, is there a point where the inertia of his behavior and the decisions he had already made at that point didn't matter? And I know there was a lot of you that said, wait a second, I don't like that. There should be a chance of redemption. But how many people have we seen over and over again? Every time you give them a chance to redeem themselves, they just can't help it, and they keep making those choices. And so are they in control? Is God in control? I don't know that we know necessarily what the thought process is, but I can tell you there's a lot of discussion around that very challenging point. Right? Who was, if this was, and this goes to this problem too. So, in fact, what do we do in a Passover Seder when we list the plagues? What do? We take a drop out of our glass. We know that we wanted to be out of Egypt and we wanted to go to freedom, but we watched, in order to do that, the destruction that had to happen, right? We wanted the Holocaust to come to an end, but it was the whole destruction of Germany and a lot of Western Europe and Eastern Europe that was the result of it. And it's how do you stand up for what you believe in? How do you stand up to protect yourself, knowing that sometimes you've got to do that with force, but not become the ones who are destroying in the process? And it's a huge piece, a huge challenge. I read that little line about the hail and the warning that they got, and there's all of that discussion in what happens in Israel. Oh, well, the Israeli government told the people in this apartment complex that there's going to be bombing and gave them a chance to leave, right? And is that really, does that really change the nature of the bombing? And does that really help people, or is it still destructive because you're still destroying their homes? And what are the boundaries of that stuff? It's something that's really challenging when you're talking about modern Israel in some of this very same situations.
Well, that does create a connection in the sense that if you have to destroy a country in order to stop their behavior, then is that the philosophy behind Israel in destroying Gaza?
That is a huge question, and I find it incredibly challenging, because on one hand I want terrorism and that fear to stop, and the other is, at what point do you destroying? And you asked the perfect question, Susan. If I had an answer, I would be much happier. I struggle with that very question too.
Because why people go along with bad things is Milgram studied that. Do you understand the Milgram study, obedience to authority?
And what was the end result?
The end result was they obedience to authority. They do it because authority told them to do it, not because they used free will and thought it through.
And
So do we have to?
And I'm looking over here because here we have a prosecutor, and you have all kinds of discussions about people's responsibility and free will and all of that, I'm going to guess, in the courtroom.
But you can't have free will if there's an authority that will punish you for having free will. More reason.
These are as you're reading the plagues, here we're looking 4,000 years ago. As we're looking in our very world, it's some of the same really challenging questions. And this is, you're seeing, what is her answer is, be careful with your language and realize that even sometimes in protecting yourself, you have to do damage to somebody else. And how do we as Jews make sure we are acting with compassion, that we are acting with grace? So at a wedding, you step on a glass, right? For Passover, we pull out a little bit of wine for each of the plagues, and I will tell you there is ritual after ritual in Judaism that we leave things incomplete, because you're supposed to, like, you're not supposed to paint your entire house. You're supposed to leave a corner undone. There's all kinds of different things. Like, Danny, you can make a whole business out of that. don't unpack your last, I guess it would be don't unpack your last box because you're eventually going to move again, right? How many of you have an unpacked box at home? Okay? Have you unpacked all your boxes, Rick? But the text is really beautiful from Pirkei Avot. You are not responsible for completing the task, but doesn't mean you don't work on it. Lo alecha hamlaha like more, right? So I wanted to bring these up because these are some of the different questions we have. I wish I had better answers other than let's talk about what some of those boundaries are and be aware of, and what does Judaism always do? Be aware of where you are hardening your heart against somebody else. Be aware of where you are preventing somebody else from moving through their world. Be conscious of the world around you. Are you seeing a natural phenomenon? Or are you seeing a plague? What are the things that we need to do to get out of our stuck and narrow places that prevent us from going to freedom? So just wanted to give you, so this offers you a little bit. Are there any other questions? There's more commentary here. Yes.
In the end, if Pharaoh hardened, if God hardened Pharaoh's heart, then at the last plague, did he still harden his heart, or did Pharaoh unharden his own heart?
I think there was honestly a little bit of both. And then notice even after the last plague, what did Pharaoh do?
Well, he said, go.
He said go, and then what did he do?
Again, went after them.
He then went after him full of...
So who hardened whose heart at that point?
Yes.
You don't know?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that was kind of the process, and they all went into the sea, and they were ready to, rather than saying, you know what, maybe this is not worth it, let's change this thing, let these people go. They then continued with the pursuit of that and ended up destroying themselves even more.
Yeah, that's like you have to really go after people's self-interest to make a change.
So, as we are together on this Shabbat morning, we are coming to the end of our time of prayer. And so I do invite you on page 282 to rise. And Susan, in honor of your birthday, would you like to come open the ark? And I walked up here and then, of course, forgot the clicker. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gudula liotzer breishi, shelo asanu kogoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot adama, shelo sam chilkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol namonam. Vanachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz umoshav yikaro bashamayim mina'al ushchinatu zo Begov he meromim, hu Adonai, hu Elohim, bashamayim mima'al. You got me singing mima'al. Ushchinatu zo, begov he meromim, hu Eloheinu enod, emet malkeinu efesulato, Kakatuv betorato, v'yadata yom, v'hashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, bashamayim ima'al, v'yol haaretz mitachat enod. And so we close these words of Aleinu together. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. And Susan, as you celebrate your birthday, may you do so with lots of sweetness, with lots of joy. Not more answers, but at least definitely good questions. Happy birthday. And as we offer that bit of sweetness to Susan, this is Judaism. So what do? We temper moments of joy with moments of loss and sadness. And so as we close our service, we do so in memory of our loved ones who have died. So is there anyone who is observing a yard site on this Shabbat? So we also have in our congregation the recent passing, and our hearts go out to Ruth Dobkin, and it's David Rautenberg is her brother. And also the family of Marvin Hollander. And we think of all of those in our congregation and community who are saying goodbye to someone they love in this past year, but also in this season in years past. And so we offer these words of praise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah b'yalma divrach cheruteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedechol beit Yisrael b'gala uv'zman kari v'yimru Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtalach v'yipa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'alma v'yimru Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are saying goodbye to someone they love as we say Amen. And is there anyone that would like to offer the words of Kiddush? Does anybody have something that is sweet in their lives that they are experiencing on this Shabbat? No sweetness? Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And as we have a cinnamon and sugar challah, no one wants challah then? That sounds good, huh? Okay, so what do we say? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is sung. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei avon. Who's going to come rip off the first piece? That's the point. Okay. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.